One of my favorite lines from the movie Remember the Titans is when Rev quotes from the book of Isaiah chapter 40. Even youths grow tired and weary. Even young men will stumble and fall. But those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. Yeah. Gets me fired up every time. It's a great verse. It's empowering. It's invigorating, right? We all want that strength that comes from the Lord, don't we? And certainly Isaiah 40 was written to get us fired up, to realize that God can be our strength. But I want you to notice what he says about how we access that strength, how we get plugged into that. He says, those who wait for the Lord will renew their strength. Some versions say, those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. I want us to really focus in on this idea of waiting on the Lord, because we've been forced into a season of waiting, haven't we? We've been forced to slow down, to take stock of things. We've been given more time to evaluate life and to just do things differently. And for a lot of people, we don't like it, right? We don't like to wait. In fact, a lot of people are asking, when can we get back to our normal schedules? Waiting is not something that we like to do. We like to do things on our time schedule in the way that we want them to happen. And what happens when we're forced to wait, maybe things around us get quieter, but our insides start screaming, don't they? Because we're just uncertain. And yet, the Bible tells us that when we wait on the Lord, He will renew our strength. I was thinking about this yesterday, this idea, as I was reading through the book of Acts and just thinking about the apostles. As the book of Acts opens, there's a lot of uncertainty about what their future will hold. You know, at the end of the Gospels, they'd been with Jesus. They saw this clear path to glory and to greatness. In fact, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter pulls out his sword. He's ready to fight for it. He cuts off the guy's ear. And then all of a sudden, the script just flips. And Jesus said, that's not what this is about. And within the next couple of minutes, Jesus is arrested. The disciples are scattered. They are completely confused. Their norm or their expectations have just been rocked. What in the world is going to happen next? They don't know what to do. They're afraid. In fact, following Jesus' death, they get together and they're huddling up in these upper rooms because they're afraid of what might happen to them. There's just so much uncertainty. But then as the Gospels end and the book of Acts begins, Jesus again reveals himself to them alive. He's risen. And he empowers them. He says, I've got a mission for you. You can do this. They are encouraged. They're ready for whatever comes next. But you know what Jesus tells them? He says, I want you to go to Jerusalem and I want you to wait. And God's going to do something to help you with the next step of your mission. And that's what we see from them. As the book of Acts opens, they come back and they find themselves in this upper room and they're waiting and they're praying. I just think that's such a good message for our time, as we don't know what's going on. And this season of waiting is really about building trust in God. You know, we don't know exactly what God is working or what God is up to or what to expect, but we know that He's there. We know that He wants us to learn something from this season. And I'm convinced that a lot of it has to do with our trust. He's taken away these foundations of trust, of normalcy, these foundations of trust in people with power. I mean, no one during this time has the ability to control what is going on. And God's just sitting up in the heavens. He's still on His throne. He's looking at mankind. And He wants us to see Him as a sovereign God and sovereign Creator. But more than just that, He wants us to put our trust in Him. He wants us to find peace and calm and purpose in trusting in Him. And so, I think during these times especially, we need to be people who follow this pattern of the disciples, where we are just devoting ourselves to prayer and waiting on the Lord. You know, the psalmist would write in Psalm 46, verse number 10, "Be still and know that I am God." Now, there's a lot of things that are slowing down in our communities. I mean, you look outside, there's not as many people, there's not as many cars. It may be a lot quieter outside, but our insides are screaming, aren't they? They're screaming for resolution. And what Psalm 46 says is we need to find a way to be still in our hearts. That's what waiting is about. Be still because we can have confidence in God. Be still because God has promised and God is faithful. Be still and know that I am God. And so during this season of waiting, let's devote ourselves to prayer. Let's find deeper trust in God. Let's let go of those things that have already been let go. Let's move forward, forgetting what lies behind, pressing forward to what lies ahead. There's better things ahead. The best is yet to come. That's the nature of God. That's the nature of the gospel. And some of these weights that have been dragging us down, God has released us from those things. And so let's move forward, maybe not knowing what's going to happen, but trusting more deeply in God.